Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Schmela. I'm the Executive Advisor at SolarPower Europe, and I would like to welcome you to the launch of our report, 100% Renewable Europe. In Europe, or 100% renewable energy in Europe before 2050. That's basically what we are looking at. I'm excited. It took us over a year and was probably the longest project I've been working on during my SolarPower Europe time. But here we are with very exciting results of SolarPower Europe and LUT's 2050 study, 100% Renewable Europe, how to make Europe energy system climate neutral before 2050. That's a somewhat longer title. Lorena, do I have the mouse? I don't.
It should work.
Maybe you just switch on, so you turn the pages. I can't. Can you?
Yes, just say next, and I will switch the slides.
And nothing happens. No, that's one too far. Okay, in any case. Okay, so we have 1.5 hours. This is our agenda. So we will have a keynote speech from our president, Artistotelis Chantavas, who comes originally from Enel Green Power and who just became the president last month. We're very happy and excited to have him with us. Then I will present the key results of the study. And afterwards, we will have a panel discussion with distinguished guests from the Commission, from peer associations, and from a distinguished think tank in Brussels. And you are all invited to ask questions, because I think there will be. I would like to give the word to Artistotelis to introduce you to what we are planning to launch today. Artistotelis, please.
Thank you, Michael. I hope you can hear me. Today we reach a significant milestone. I would like to say that it can be a historic moment for our association. The SolarPower Europe and LUT University report is a first of its kind. It shows that the 100% renewable energy system enables the EU to become a climate neutral continent before 2050, complying with the ambitious 1.5 degrees Celsius Paris Agreement target, and without resorting to carbon sinks. It also highlights the pivotal role of electrification to achieve a 100% renewable-based energy system, to generate significant system efficiency gains, and also to facilitate sectoral integration. The study clearly shows a 100% renewable energy system with its benefits can be achieved even before 2050. However, it will also require a strong European and national commitment to bring forward the right policies and harvest the benefits of a renewable-based energy transition for Europe. According to the study, solar energy only could deliver over 4 million of qualified and local jobs by 2050, making the European Green Deal a reality. Now, the question is how to make this happen. Some key highlights on the policy recommendations stemming from this groundbreaking report are the following. First, policies need to enshrine the objective of climate neutrality into law and review European Union's 2030 greenhouse gas target to comply with the Paris Agreement target. By 2030, we must prioritize the renewable-based electrification of EU economy, paving the way to the development of competitive and sustainable hydrogen solutions. We have to invest in upgrading, expanding, and modernizing Europe's electricity grids. There is a need also for accelerated deployment of decentralized flexibility resources, including electric vehicles charging, storage, and demand response. Especially these days of COVID crisis, it is made clear that we must roll out a solid industrial solar strategy. Last but not least, we have to develop skill sets and training programs to unlock the potential of solar jobs. I don't want to take more time. By closing, I would like to thank and congratulate all the people and parties who contributed in preparing this excellent report. I am sure this can be the stepping stone for the right policies to be created and implemented, and for solar to become a key technology in the effort of a carbon-free Europe for the future generations, for our kids. So, Michael, now you can elaborate further on the specifics of the report. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aristotelis, for this kind introduction. Okay, I want to lead you through this report, and maybe just as an introduction. So the question is, of course, why have we done this report? There are quite some reports actually out there, but okay, we're the Solar Association, and when you look at most of the other reports, actually, the solar part is somewhat smaller, in particular, if you look at Europe. So, but when you take simply into consideration that solar's share in Europe's electricity supply system is actually only around 5% today, we still have to see that the technologies has a very high versatility. We got incredibly strong public support, and we've seen a rapidly increasing cost competitiveness, which we believe makes solar really a game changer. So with solar being simply the lowest cost power generation source in many parts of Europe already today, it even beats wholesale power prices in northern countries like Finland, for example. It has won recently many technology neutral tenders in Europe. In 2019, solar was installed in the EU, or more solar capacity was installed in the EU than from any other power generation source. And if you look at 2019 also, newly added annual solar capacities more than doubled year on year in the EU. So let's look at what we've done to explore solar's potential in a 100% renewable scenario. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is basically what we've modeled. So we looked together with LUT University in Finland at 3 scenarios. So once we have the laggard scenario, this is a slower energy transition up to 2050, which results only in a renewable share of 62% and approximately a 90% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This will miss the European Commission's climate neutrality target and also the Paris Agreement targets. In this scenario, we've assumed that current and upcoming fossil fuels, as well as nuclear power, are not phased out and simply continue operating until the end of their lifetime. While substantial new nuclear power plants and also new fossil plants are added to the system, according to scenarios that the European Commission actually modeled before they announced the Green Deal. There was a set of 9 scenarios, and we based this scenario on one of them. Then we have the moderate scenario. Here we look into a medium pace energy transition towards 100 renewables by 2050. That is meeting the European Commission's climate neutrality vision with 0 greenhouse gas emissions, and the 2-degree Paris Agreement target is also met. In this scenario, fossil fuel power plants, also current fossil fuel power plants, are phased out by 2050, and no new nuclear power plants are considered. But we simply assumed that the existing and under construction plants will operate until their technical lifetimes. At the same time, no new coal power plants are not allowed, simply due to climate regulations, whereas new gas are allowed, but with the obligation to be switched to non-fossil fuels during the transition. And finally is what we call the leadership scenario, because it's really ambitious what we think. And this is a rapid energy transition in the next 2 decades, resulting in 100% renewables and 0 greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, and achieving actually even the 1.5-degree Paris target. Here, no or all fossil fuel and nuclear power plants are phased out by 2040. No new plants of this technologies are considered. New gas-fired power plants, however, are allowed, but also here with the obligation to switch to non-fossil fuels before 2040. Next slide, please. So we wanted to offer with this report a new perspective to this discussion on how to enable a true European Green Deal. And so we benchmarked ourselves to some of the reports that were done particularly on Europe. And here you can clearly see that no other report that has modeled decarbonization scenarios for Europe, for the European energy system, is as ambitious as ours. There's no existing study that explores 100% renewable energy in Europe without carbon sinks, nor is there any model that looks into 100% renewable energy scenario by 2040. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at primary energy demand first. The key finding here is that a high rate of electrification is essential of achieving 100% renewable and integrated energy system. So we can clearly see that a fundamental shift towards high levels of electrification will shape the European energy transition, which is currently, and this you can see the gray big gray bar, is around 85% fossil fuel and nuclear based. Over the transition, you go to the far right, and you see that in 2050, you see that this is completely switched. So when you look at the moderate and the leadership scenarios, at the bars in the middle and to the right, you see that the electrification level will be around 85 or even 86%, while for the laggard scenario, we will stay at 51% with a quite high share on fossil fuel nuclear still operating. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do in the next 3 slides, I will look at the 3 sectors: power, heat, and transport. And I think the biggest surprise for for us, and it was obviously a very positive surprise, is that 100% renewable energy system is primarily a solar story in the end. So in both the modeled 100% renewable scenarios, so that means the moderate and the leadership scenario, solar generates more than 60% of EU electricity by 2050. You can see a lot of yellow and a lot of blue, which means in the long run, solar and wind are the two main pillars of the European energy transition. Due to the high capacity factors, wind obviously provides higher shares of electricity generation up to 2030. However, solar's versatility, it can be used for small and also centralized utility scale power plants, and its really strong cost competitiveness will make it the main source of electricity generation from 2030 onwards. And that's true for all three scenarios. And to really understand the sheer dimension of this, so according to these models, solar will provide capacities in 100% or in these three scenarios that range between 4.7 terawatt for the laggard scenario and 8.8 terawatt in 2050. That's huge, and I think we will discuss that later. So, but it's very surprising and yeah, very interesting. Next slide. Let's move to heat generation. While with power, we're sort of on track in terms of going renewables, heat generation lags much behind, and even worse is the transport sector. For heat generation, the message is here, and the key message is here that heat pumps will emerge as a core part of a 100% renewable energy system, with what we modeled have over 60% share of heat generation by 2050. What you can see in this graph is, whereas today the heat market is dominated by fossil gas, which takes up nearly 50% market share, a combination of direct and indirect electric heating will take over by 2050 and reaching over 60% and nearly 70% in all scenarios, owing simply to the substantial efficiency gains of these electricity-based solutions. So we will have renewable-based electric heat on the one hand side, so that means direct methods, and we will heat pumps, which indirectly form then the majority of heat generating capacities by 2050. This will be complemented, as you can see, by a small but steady share of other renewables, such as bioenergy. And what you see there, what's also is that there is also a notable portion of renewable-based synthetic fuels. That's namely hydrogen and methane, which contribute towards industrial process heat in the later stages of the transition. You can see that in the 2050, mostly in the 2050 bars. Next slides. Here we show you in two graphs. On the one hand, on the left, the energy demand for transport broken down for fuel use, and then it's actually also seen for the different modes where it's used. That's road, rail, marine, and aviation. So the key findings for the transport sector are that first, 100% renewable transport sector requires significant synthetic fuels for marine and aviation. And second, electrolyzers for hydrogen production will be the crucial technology, or will be another crucial technology for 100% renewables energy system. A few more words still on transport. So transport is responsible for almost a quarter of the European greenhouse gas emissions today. It shows the lowest energy shares compared to its peers. So today, only around 5% of the energy need for transport in Europe is provided by renewables. Electrification share is even lower, it's 2%. When we look at transport, obviously direct electrification will emerge as the most efficient solution. On the other hand, in 2050, aviation and marine sectors will heavily rely on renewable synthetic fuels. You can see that especially in the 200% renewables scenarios, where they will result in nearly 2/3 of the final energy demand. While the laggard scenario will be still sourcing, you still see that gray part here, around 1/4 of its needs from fossil fuels. What you can see in the right diagram, and that's quite interesting, is simply that the final energy demand goes down for road transport. This is due to the high efficiency of electrification, while it goes up somewhat for marine and aviation. That's simply because you now go via synthetic fuels, which need the electricity to be produced, and is obviously less efficient. Next slide, please. Okay, so the key finding here is that batteries will provide the bulk of energy storage in a 100% renewable energy system. Obviously, storage plays a critical role in the transition of the energy system towards high share of renewables. That's nothing new. It will provide stability and flexibility and reduce then, in the end, curtailments to an economic minimum. We will see a combination of storage technologies that will cover energy demand, but batteries clearly provide the bulk of the storage needs, reaching a share of up to 70%, depending on the scenario. Here you have to see whereas gas and thermal storage will be mainly used in the heat sector, batteries are primarily the means of storage in the power sector. Next slide, please. However, although storage technologies are an indispensable part of the energy transition, a highly integrated approach with full sector coupling, and that's really key, and high electrification rates will deliver the most efficient and cost-effective energy system. And that means the growth of storage output will be not higher than 25% in the end of the whole energy demand. Next slide, please. Let's look at the distribution of electricity generation outputs. The pattern you can see here is almost obvious. The major portion of solar PV generation will take place in the southern regions, while higher shares of wind energy are produced in the northern and western regions of Europe. What differs here is the higher percentage of wind generation compared to capacity. So while we see this is here the moderate scenario, while we see for the moderate scenario and the leadership scenarios, the generation shares of solar reaching around, in average, around 60% by 2050. if you would look at capacities, it's over 70. And again, that's the difference in capacity factors. I think the key takeaway again here is that wind and solar together are the two main pillars of the energy transition, and they together supply almost 95% of the power needs in Europe in 2050. Yeah, you can simply see also here that's basically the total production. It's quite huge, 17,000 terawatt hours or 17 petawatt hours. That's for the moderate scenario. For the leadership scenario, it would be even a bit higher. So we will exceed the 19,000 terawatt hours. Next slide, please. When you talk about 100% renewable energy scenarios, the big elephant in the room is always to convince people that the lights are not getting out at some point. So seasonality is really the most frequently raised doubt on 100% renewables. While it is today, when you talk to people, usually really easy to convince them that a battery is an appropriate solution to overcome a night. It is much more demanding to explain how an energy system running on solar and wind can survive throughout the winter in Europe. A bit on methodology, so the hourly resolution of the LUT model that we've used for this study allows that supply and demand can be calculated for every day until 2050 for each of the 20 regions. So in a very high resolution. So, and in this regard, the hourly results were selected for visualization from the modeling of the moderate scenario for 2 weeks. One was the most research-rich week in spring, and then we've taken, and that you see on the right, the week of the least variable renewable energy generation for France. In the report, we've also done that for Germany and for Europe as a whole. But what you can simply nicely see here in the spring week, there's substantially, first, of course, more electricity generation in comparison to the winter week. And what you can also see here is that solar PV is the dominant energy source, while lower amounts of wind energy generation can be observed. But you can also see that batteries, electrolyzers, and energy export provide the system flexibility that's needed. In any case, even in the winter moderate scenario, you simply see that 100% renewables-based and fully integrated energy system will also there fully function without failure every day of the year. And even in the dark winter days, France can easily cope with energy demand. Next slide, please. Let's talk about cost, because at some point, of course, it's clear that this doesn't come for free. It has to be done, but it comes at some cost. But again, a surprising finding here is that 100% renewable energy system is the most cost-effective way to become climate neutral by 2050. So the cumulative cost of achieving 100% renewable energy, as you can see in this graph, in the moderate scenario, are actually 6% lower than the cost of inadequate action in the less ambitious laggard scenario, which receives in the same time frame only 62% renewables, unlike the 100% renewables in the moderate scenario. So thus, actually, this inaction would result in missing both the targets of European climate neutrality and the Paris Agreement, and at higher cost. Not a great solution. If we look at it on cost, actually, from a different point of view, Lorena, please, next slide. So if we look at the energy transition, not only about the direct investment, but also at the per unit generation cost. So we look at here levelized cost of energy. Then we see that the 200% renewable energy scenarios have LCOEs of 40 cents in 2050. This is around 5 to 6% below the laggards average of around 50 cents. And at the same time, it is about 7% more competitive than what we have to pay today, which is around 51% in average. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's come to what's in the end the most important thing of this exercise, and that's greenhouse gas emissions, which need to be reduced. The key message here is that 100% renewable transition triggers the sharpest decline in greenhouse gas emissions. So if we follow the path of the 100% renewable scenario, so the moderate and the leadership, greenhouse gas emissions will decline by over 60% compared to 1990 by 2030, and down to zero in 2050, or even 2040 in the leadership scenario. In contrary, in the least ambitious laggard scenario, Europe reaches only 53% CO2 emission reductions. And as you can simply still hear, it still emits around 800 million tons of CO2 equivalents per year in 2050. Next slide, please. Yeah, if we look at cumulative greenhouse gas emissions, we simply see that the laggards pathway would burden the European society with the biggest amount. So we would still see 89 gigatons being emitted over the coming 30 years. In the moderate scenario, that would be only 64 gigatons, or 28% less compared to the laggard scenario. While the leadership scenario has the most positive impacts on the climate, resulting in remaining cumulative greenhouse gas emissions of only 53 gigatons, and down to zero over the next 20 years. And so in comparison to the laggard scenario, the leadership scenario emits also 41% less up to 2050. Let me just summarize the findings before we come, so that we can come to the panel discussion. So next slide. I just read that. You can see that exactly like that in the report. So in summary, our results from this research project indicate that a low ambition pathway is a burden for society from both a climate change and an economic perspective. Moderate scenario modeling, zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 appears to be the most economic pathway. However, if you want to show real leadership, a highly ambitious climate change mitigation pathway is possible. That would result in 30% higher investment than for the laggard scenario, but with the benefit of lower per unit energy costs as of 2050, and the promise of meeting the ambitious Paris Agreement, and that no more greenhouse gas emissions will be emitted from 2040. In the leadership scenario, and that's also an interesting takeaway, you will see that parts of the investment will even lead to energy exports as of 2040 and effectively result in negative CO2 emissions. That's also an interesting takeaway because the discussion at the moment is showing in a somewhat different direction. Next slide. So these are the policy recommendations that Artistotelis has already mentioned in the beginning. I don't read them once again, but I think these are for sure some of the points we want to discuss in the upcoming panel discussion that we are starting now. Next slide, please. First of all, I would nevertheless thank to the sponsors of this research project. Without them, this project would have not been possible. So big thanks to the supporters of this study. Let's start with the panel discussion. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to introduce to you, we have with us Paula Abreu Marques. She's the head of Unit Renewables and CCS policy at DG Energy of the European Commission. We have with us Matthias Buck, who is the director of European energy policy at leading think tank Agora Energiewende. We have also with us Thomas Nowak, Secretary General of the European Heat Pump Association. I'm happy to welcome my dear colleague Aurélie Beauvais, our policy director, and for the moment also our acting CEO, as Walburga is on maternity leave. We have also, and so what I would like to do in this coming 45 minutes, I would really like to discuss with you the somewhat surprising results of this report, and maybe let's start with an opening question to everyone. So, what was the most surprising, exciting result of this study from your perspective? Maybe Paula, you first. Yes. Paula?
Yes, you listen to me?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Hello, Paula.
Can you see my video or not? You cannot see me.
Unfortunately not.
Okay, good. It's fine. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank very much SolarPower Europe for inviting me. I'm sorry I cannot connect with my PC. I had to do it on the phone. This is why you don't see me. I thought because I have downloaded the application on my iPhone, so I thought I could also have the video, but apparently it doesn't work. I'd like to congratulate SolarPower Europe for this work because it is really coming at the right time, if I may say so. And I'm sure that my modeler colleagues in the Commission, who are currently very busy in analyzing all the scenarios under the 50-55 exercise, as you know, I'm sure that they will find food for thought in your work. I think that solar PV here, congratulations to the industry. Was a tremendous year for the sector. Okay, we are in a different context now, and I think we can come back to this issue later on in the debate. I would like to outline one specific or finding of your work. I think you have come to very interesting conclusions, which in a way, I mean, goes in line with what the Commission published in terms of its long-term strategy back in 2018. So indicating a very high increase in electrification in the final energy demand, and these being largely based on renewable energy sources. So in a way, I mean, the things are aligned. Of course, you go higher to 100% than what the Commission has put forward in its analysis. Being an economist myself, perhaps the part that I was really interested in was when it comes to the costs and the conclusion you got that that could happen with a cumulative cost of less than 6%. I think it is a very interesting finding. Go through with detail to your study, because I'd like to see how you factor in for instance, the commissioning of certain installations, notably the commissioning of nuclear. And also what I found extremely interesting is the impact that you indicate for 2030 of 60% reduction in greenhouse gases. So I thought those two were the most interesting for me. Of course, the study cannot be seen in isolation, just the two indicators, the overall thing. And but again, thank you very much. I think you have come across an interesting analysis that we know that member states are not all entirely aligned with your final result of 100% renewables, but for sure this study can provide can be an important tool of encouragement for the member states to go towards a higher ambition in renewables. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paula. Maybe we just go from left to right. At least on my screen, I see Matthias on the, on the left. Matthias, so what's your most surprising takeaways? We cannot hear you.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Yeah. Thanks to your colleague. So many thanks first for inviting me to join this panel discussion and to witness the launch of your new study. And congratulations to that study. And of course, we all know that at the moment, the political context and priority is a very different one. The COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing. And the main priority of government at the moment is to have the measures in place to contain the pandemic and to help the economy from dropping too sharply and too fastly. But of course, once these emergency measures are hopefully effective, there will come a time for recovery and a time for reform. And what is currently starting to be discussed is how will the recovery of Europe's economy look like. And of course, in that context, I believe that the study you present today will be in one reference point in the debate, because it is really critical that the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis in Europe takes into account the long-term perspective. And of course, there's another crisis, the climate crisis, that needs to be part of the long-term perspective. And so it is interesting then to see that different from what the Commission presented in its long-term strategy in November 2018, that your study now shows that it is indeed possible to reach 100% renewables in Europe, not only by 2050, but even by 2040. Now, to me, and I don't comment on some of the specifics you mentioned, broadly speaking, the main messages, headline messages, we see very similar. Of course, then there are some nuances that we will probably discuss now in the panel at some point. But I think the main messages for me is first, however you look at renewables, your study is enforcing the message that a more rapid scaling of renewables in Europe is a no regret really under all circumstances. I think this is an important message to governments to continue prioritizing renewable scale-up, and it should also be an important message to the renewables industry in Europe. And then intellectually, I'm quite struck by the fact that you managed to see 100% renewables pathway without carbon sinks. And of course, we would have to look into the details of the study, how this is being done in detail. So thank you. I think it is an important contribution to the debate, really to the recovery debate that will start in some weeks.
Thanks, Matthias. Thomas? Oh, no, Aurélie, sorry. I just please.
Good morning. So you want me to speak first, Aurélie
no,
first?
let's Aurélie maybe first, and then
Please go ahead.
All good. Thanks a lot. So thank you, and really, I think I will only echo what you said, Michael. I'm really happy that we can present this study today, and I would really like to welcome our panelists to be there with us. They are all here for a reason. Also because I think the study shows very interesting results that have been echoed by many people that are here today. And for me, the key takeaway, it's a very simple one. It is that we can achieve a climate neutral economy with 100% renewable, even before that is clear. But it really shows really only the amazing potential that the European Union has when it comes to generating renewable electricity. And I think in the current debate, that's the first thing we need to say, because there are a lot of doubts about our capacity to have this domestic generation power.
I'm not sure I understand.
And the study shows that we can have 19,000 terawatt-hour being produced with renewables. So that is really good that we can power the whole economy with it. And I agree, intellectually, there can be different pathways to that. And in fact, the only value of this study is also to allow everyone to consider the different options in a fully transparent way. And I think, Paula, you mentioned the fact that the member states indeed might not all support that, but on the other hand, we saw early March 6 member states really making a clear stand for having a 100% renewable scenario to be able to see at least what it could bring to the economy. And we are very happy notably to have Claude Tourmes that wrote the foreword of this study for us. And I think clearly it shows not only that we can, but that it makes sense. And indeed, in the whole discussions we are having in the green recovery, I fully agree with Matthias, there is a time for everything. And at the same time, when we will prepare our recovery, because we will come back from this crisis, really it is very interesting to know that 100% renewable pathway can be really the most attractive economically wise, that it can really be an affordable scenario, which is to the benefit of European consumers, and also when it comes to jobs. And I think that's why so many people have been calling for a green European recovery, because when we look only for solar, that could be more than 4 million jobs by 2050 for Europe. So it really makes sense to look at this. And in the end, the whole study simply shows how the incredible cost competitiveness of renewables have really and are really changing the game as we are looking to our pathways for climate neutrality.
Okay, so then look, Thomas, you please.
Yes, well, I'm also very pleased to be here. So thank you for the invitation and thank you for the study. You asked what is our most exciting insight. And I have to say, I was not very surprised about the outcome, because I have read the other studies from the Lappeenranta University and Energy Watch Group that come to a similar conclusion. But what I find really prominently positioned in this study is a new message for Europe that could actually be quite guiding for the next weeks and months. And what I read from this is a very strong electrify first. You can see that from direct and indirect electrification via power fuels and via hydrogen and so on, this 100% renewable energy in Europe becomes possible. And that is something I find that needs to be stressed more. It's not a question of should we electrify or do hydrogen, but it's a question of how do we use the electricity that we have to generate from renewable sources, either directly, and if I take it from the heating perspective, in the most efficient way, it would be with heat pumps and some storage, or indirectly in those areas where it's not possible. And I think that's also a message that I guess Paula and myself, we share. We need a clear category of needs, of who needs which sector needs which type of electrons or which type of molecules to be powered 100% from renewable energy. What I need to look into in more detail, and that is maybe what I find the big challenge here, is how to activate the end user. Also, your policy suggestions, they are quite policy orientated, obviously, but I'm not sure that just new policy will be enough to activate end users to do all this. That new policies will need to translate into making you, me, everybody. And you know, I look outside my window, I can see 10 roofs that have no photovoltaic system, and I'm absolutely sure that they have no heat pumps in the basement. So the question really is, how do we help the people to change their behavior in the direction that makes all this in the end reality? Because we all know at the moment it's a nice model, but a very good one.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. I think Aurélie, you can maybe take that, because if we just if we look at that, what Thomas asks is actually, he asks for actions. I think in the study we also refer to that as part of the policy recommendations, that we really want to have some clear actions being taken especially in this decade now. Huh?
Yes. Indeed, I mean, I think, Thomas, it's a very good point, which we have also identified, because the study also shows, just looking, for example, at the potential of prosumers, indeed, how much prosumers could bring to this whole transition approach. The potential today would be equivalent to almost a quarter of electricity demand being covered actually by only, for example, solar rooftops. And that is why clearly, and that is some work for Paula, and she has been identifying as well this challenge very clearly, as well as the Commission, to in the upcoming initiative on smart sector integration, and notably the renovation wave. Indeed, we need more ambition to unlock this roof potential, find ways to finance very well European-wide rooftop programs. And it also makes sense from a job perspective, FYI, indeed, because, for example, a recent study, well, not so recent now, which we made with Ernst & Young 2 years ago, showed as well that the job potential is very much higher when it comes to rooftops. And that's clear, and maybe that's a side note that we do not cover explicitly in the study. When we discussed with the IEA, with the most recent forecast, they showcase that in the next years, we will have more distributed PV installed than, for example, onshore wind, when it comes to their forecast from now on to 2024. And it will imply at some point a global reflection on network tariffs, and how to value the flexibility, and how to reconcile the approaches as well of network operators, prosumers, and the system approach, so that we can really harvest the benefit every step of the way, because there will be a very strong role for the bottom-up transition to provide the system integration and enhance the flexibility. And this is clearly key for harvesting most of the local renewable resources we will produce.
Matthias, if you really think in this ambitious 100% scenarios, what do you think has to be done actually in the next 10 years to really make that happen? So what would be your ask for key actions to be taken?
Thank you. I mean, I was looking at the charts you presented, and of course, it seems the decade from 2020 to 2030 in your 100% renewable scenario is not so dramatically different from what an increased climate ambition scenario by 2030 already entails. And I think it is important for us and everyone really to appreciate what this means. It means that we must at least triple the speed of renewables deployment compared to what has happened during the last decade. And of course, we know it's technology is available, it's affordable. We completely concur with you. It's predominantly wind and solar, but really we need the political will to now very significantly accelerate. And now from that perspective, my reflections. First, I think it is absolutely critical in the next month to keep on repeating and repeating that the European Green Deal is the no-regret economic strategy to emerge stronger from the corona crisis. It is absolutely critical not to let it slip into something else and to be sidelined and replaced by ideas of revitalizing the past. No, to be stronger in the future, we need to really stick to this new economic paradigm. And now concretely what the EU should be doing to support that, I think to very significantly accelerate renewables deployment, there is an issue of financing, of course, and particularly in the medium future, where some member states with very high ambition on renewables will be going through potentially a fiscal crisis. I mean, I'm thinking of Spain, I'm thinking of Italy in particular, Greece perhaps as well. Additional financing from the European level, and particularly the European Investment Bank, I think will be critical to really continue on the growth of renewables that we need to see. One idea that would be interesting to explore in the Commission, I think, is whether this renewable energy financing mechanism that was established under the governance regulation, part of the clean energy package, could be used now, not to close the gap, but really to complement the national efforts where there are much more constrained possibilities to support from government, national government funds in some parts of Europe in the future. I think there's also we need to take a hard look on the state aid framework, because much of what needs to be done in acceleration is national action. Some of it will become state aid relevant. This is not so much an issue for me in the power sector, but then of course your study clearly indicates we're talking about 100% renewables across all sectors. So particularly looking at the building sector, or the greening of industry, there are some open issues when it comes to state aid compatibility that will need to be discussed, and where we need to have a clear signal by the Commission that has exclusive decision-making powers on state aid to say, yes, we want member states to accelerate. And then I think, and this is also something you're proposing, we need some really visible benchmarks, like big milestones, to show we're moving into the right direction. So what you are suggesting, the Pan-European Solar Rooftop Program, is really something we would support as well as something important and visible. Something else that you don't mention, which I think is interesting based on a study recently done by the Joint Research Center, and this study showed of the Commission, and this study showed that there is a very significant solar potential in the current and former coal regions in Europe. Mm-hmm. And we all know that the energy transition in Europe needs to be there will need to be a phasing out of coal in Europe in the next, potentially already in the next decade. Now, if we were to use the vast solar potential in those coal regions, particularly by converting open cast mines in coal regions to large-scale solar PV parks, this would be a very interesting way of replacing current electricity generation capacity that is dirty by capacity that is clean in the same region. And then, of course, it would also be very important to further strengthen the EU emissions trading system, simply because a higher price on polluting energy power sources is an advantage for the cleaner ones, and particularly for renewables. So we would increasingly see a market-based scaling up of renewables. And the last point that I see is that we really need to, setting aside all the discussion on targets, etc., we really need to focus on the full and effective implementation of the Clean Energy for All Europeans package, because if this would be fully implemented, there would be many, many stumbling blocks removed for a more rapid scaling of renewables. And to really get to that point, we need to think much bigger than we had in the last decade, where the Commission was initiating a concerted action on renewable energy, I very much concur with your proposal that we need something like a clean energy package implementation body, so a space where the relevant actors, stakeholders, and the decision makers can come together and routinely assess where do we stand in the transition, what are the specific challenges that emerge on the way, what are some of the solutions that work, and to really do it in a focused and continuous way. I see a very important role there for the Commission's new service that is called DG Reform, that has at its mandate to support national structural reforms, potentially also a role for the Committee of the Regions to bring the regions and the cities into the picture, as well as, of course, a role for the European Parliament to have the feedback loops between the European policy discussions and the national policy discussions.
Okay, thanks, Matthias. That was a lot. Aurélie, short, or shall we have Paula actually address that, because there's so much for the Commission?
I mean, I fully agree. That was a question to Paula that would go right after, which is correlated, which basically, I think, just to echo what Matthias said, the point is the next decade is critical. And probably the point is as well, we need to go beyond the business, what we have been doing in the past, which was good, but we need maybe a much more ambitious, I don't want to say interventionist, because it's kind of a bad word in many mouths, but actively promote the uptake of renewables across sector. And Paula, I'm really curious to hear how you would address that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for this for the point that you reached at the debate. I think that we all agree that the new Commission von der Leyen, with its Green Deal that was put on the table so quickly, is really represents a change in the gear and in the speed that we want to do things, and noting in particular that, as you just said, Aurélie, the next decades is crucial. And this is why, I mean, we had first enshrined in a proposed legislation the 2050 long-term, so carbon neutrality, and that related to that, we are looking at enhanced ambition over the next decade. So really to avoid leaving the bulk of the effort towards the end of the long-term period. So it's really, I think that's with the Green Deal, we had this determination from the Commission to speed up, to increase the ambition, but looking at that from the point of view of being an opportunity. This is an opportunity and not seen as a burden. It's an opportunity for Europe in all senses. And I trust that the current crisis and what Europe will be engaged in terms of recovery, I think again, it will put the accent on the need for speeding up the carbonization efforts, the energy transition, the digital economy. So I would like to reiterate what Matthias said before, that the crisis by no means can result in reducing our efforts, in reducing our ambition. This is exactly what the Commission already said, what our Executive Vice President, Mr. Timmermans, said clearly, that this is an opportunity for Europe to enhance efforts in decarbonization and to have both the carbon neutrality, decarbonization, and the digital development as the cornerstones of a recovery in Europe. What we are doing, I mean, you know perfectly that, I mean, apart from the climate law and first of all the Green Deal communication and the very first deliverable, which was the climate law, there are a series of work streams that are being worked out in the Commission currently. In my hands, I have the smart sector integration, which is I think that the best title would be energy system integration, because this is what we are talking about. So we are working on that in the Commission. And we had already the opportunity to debate and to listen to you, to your ideas and concerns. And here we are looking very much at a system where we see much more circularity, the use of waste, where we see a priority be definitely given to the energy efficient, which always have to come first. But it's not only energy efficiency first at the end use. It's across the system, the whole chain. It has to be looked at the whole chain, and that will already put us in the good track for decarbonization. It is also a system that has to rely on electricity, and that electricity must come for the biggest part from renewables. And this is where, and Aurélie already mentioned, we see subsequent initiatives that we are working on, for instance, the building renovation wave. This is a very privileged vehicle, an opportunity to mainstream renewable. You can't listen to me?
Très bien, écoute, le petit train du COVID isolation, ça va.
I think there are interferences, no?
Somebody is...
Yeah, and the
ouais,
yeah. Anyway,
j'ai passé un bon week-end. J'ai plein de choses à faire.
I think someone needs to switch the mic.
Pas le temps de m'ennuyer.
Paula, you?
Okay, I think we're good now.
Yeah, I think somebody maybe hacked.
Yes, okay. So I was saying the renovation wave is a very good opportunity to mainstream renewables in the building sector. And this is where 40% of our consumption is taking place in Europe. So we have really to replace fossil consumption with that, with renewables. So more electrification of demand across the sectors, in the building sector, in industry, in transport sector, in agriculture. So this is why we are looking across sectors and use consumers. It is also an energy system where for sectors where we cannot have electrification as a solution, we need to look and incentivize renewables and decarbonized fuels, including hydrogen. For those sectors, of course, we are primarily thinking about certain modes of transport, like aviation, like maritime, but also some industrial processes that cannot be electrified, at least on the basis of the information we have today, the knowledge we have today. So technical barriers or the costs are really unsurmountable. But also, we have to have a system where we adapt the markets for these, for the decarbonized and more distributed resources. So to have a level playing field across the energy carriers, having taxes and levies and carbon pricing that really leads to decarbonization. And so creating the markets for this to happen, and also creating the markets for hydrogen. When we're talking about hydrogen, of course, what we have in mind is hydrogen coming from the electrolyzer, so renewable hydrogen, the green hydrogen. In this system, we also need to look at the infrastructure, to have the infrastructure adapted and also tapping on the digitalization potential. And here, as you know, we are working on the revision of the 10E regulation, precisely of that, because of that. So this is also something that is coming. On top of this system integration strategy is also looking at other enablers. Obviously, first coming on stream is the funding. And here we have, of course, we are looking at the next multi-annual financial framework. We are looking at the Green Dealing Investment Plan that was already put forward, at the Sustainable Energy Strategy, the taxonomy. These are all very important elements that for sure will help and will promote further renewables into the system. we should not forget as well that the Commission decided to have the European semester looking much more at sustainability. This is also a very important tool, as you know, in our coordinated action with the member states. So having sustainability to be also checked and monitored through the European semester. Of course, when talking about funding, we always have to have in mind, and I think Matthias already mentioned this, that we need that this energy transition comes in a fair and just way, so that every region finds something for itself. And Matthias mentioned a very good example of the coal regions in transition. And so we have the Just Transition mechanism and the Just Transition Fund that has been agreed, proposed by the Commission, and that can also provide financing means to have that transformation. And why not to have PV power plants in these coal cast mines? So it's also a very important tool that everything goes in the same direction. We have to look at the state aid rules, and as you know, the Commission is also working on the revision of the state aid guidelines. And a proposal will be made next year, but also at research and innovation efforts, research and innovation money. So overall, through the Green Deal, we are working on a multitude of instruments that will have to play in conjunction, and all of these will come and will be put as pieces in the puzzle in this upcoming smart sector integration strategy that we are working on. So I think that this is for sure a crucial next decades. We have a good basis. We have the clean energy package that we need to make sure it is properly implemented. That is a very good foundation, the national energy and climate plans, but we need to do more, and that's what the Green Deal is coming up with, and I'm pretty sure that the Commission will be put on the table the right instruments for consideration by the member states and the European Parliament, and the influence of your sector, the influence of industry, of stakeholders at large is very important, because you know that one thing is what the Commission puts on the table, the other thing is what is the outcome of the negotiations with our partners in the Council and in the Parliament. So it's a long process, and the results sometimes is better than what the Commission put on the table, sometimes it's worse. So we have to stay vigilant and participate in this discussion and negotiation. And again, perhaps I always think that bad things always come with something positive, and perhaps this COVID crisis, will have served the purpose of a wake-up call in many senses, including for the renewable sector. And we'll be much more looking at that also from an industrial policy perspective, looking at the supply chains. And so I think that this crisis, one of the positives is that it opened the eyes for some of the things that need to be carefully looked at, and see how much and what we need to change in order to be stronger and less affected by external shocks, by this kind of crisis that we come up. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paula. So let's, we have another 15 minutes around, so let's stay a bit shorter, and I should stay short with questions and you with answers maybe. So I think I wanted to ask this question also, but I also got it several times on the control panel. So we have this is 100% renewables study. So what about the Commission actually for a pathway towards 100% renewables? Is there something planned? There was also recently the letter that was mentioned from the panelists that 6 member states have asked the Commission to develop a 100% renewable pathway. Is there a way to kind of take this up, for example, in the upcoming impact assessment announced in September, or so what?
Okay, I guess it's a question for me as well, no? Yeah, okay. So as you know, I already referred, so we're assessing the impact of increased ambition in greenhouse gas reductions, 50-55% by 2030. And the contribution that the power sector, for instance, can make. It will be published after the summer, as you know. As usual, it will take into account the different plans in the different member states, so the national energy and climate plans, and also the national long-term strategies. Once these are all received. As for the November 2018 long-term strategy, the scenarios we work on are representative of the member states' policies and reflect those decisions on the energy mix. You know that energy mix are exclusive competence by the member states. You see that some member states are willing to get to 100% renewables. Some others are not considering these, and for this reason, none of the scenarios that we have exploits a single decarbonization option to the maximal technical potential. So we have the scenarios that go into very high levels, for instance, shares of renewables. But again, this is a reflection of what the member states are themselves considering. For instance, just to give an example, some member states consider still to have to keep nuclear energy in their mix. So this has to be factored in. And 100% renewables would also have to account for long-term costs, for instance, the decommissioning of all these facilities and also the waste disposal. And so, of course, we are following very much what is done in terms of 100% renewable scenarios that are developed having a global perspective, a regional, a national, and even a local. We see many cities going towards 100% renewable. So we are following all these processes. But again, our scenarios, as it was already made in November 2018, exploit various situations. We have scenarios exploiting the maximum of renewables, but again are based on member states' national measures, their plans for 2030 and their long-term strategies for 2050.
Okay. Paula has tackled a lot of points. Any comments from the other panelists to that? Yeah, so Aurélie first, then Thomas.
So just, I think indeed there were a lot of points raised here. I fully understand the position of the Commission, and I think, well, in any case, our study at least really can shed light on this scenario as an alternative one. Of course, it could make sense to explore it in the Commission scenarios as well. And I think in any case, maybe one of the limits of achieving all our ambitions and really keeping up to the challenge is indeed that maybe we need to envisage a governance where the EU takes a stronger role. And I think that's also the point we want to make with the clean energy package implementation body, that we have this package, but we need much more commitment, especially now that we have European targets in place. We need much more European commitment to ensure that the barriers are indeed being removed. And that also is valid for infrastructures, very important, notably. Thomas?
Microphone must be switched on, Thomas. Hello? We can hear you now, I think. Oh. Lorena?
Microphone says I'm muted. Now, okay. So I would like to connect a few dots. Paula said that we should have a carbon price, and we should have a very close look at the taxes and levies that are applied between electricity and fossil fuels. We should also look very carefully at how you are supported or you are limited in becoming a prosumer, because that is not the same in every country, specifically when it comes to using that electricity to provide heating and cooling afterwards. But I think more importantly even is this connection of the EU green recovery. We have heard Matthias say talk about the great benefit that this has and the huge amounts of money that we see at the moment. And if I hear that some countries choose to continue to use nuclear, then of course they're free to do so. But by the same logic, some countries will decide to support their incumbent technologies. And I heard a very interesting webinar yesterday by Maya Göppel on green financing. She's the secretary of the German, what's it called, special body for environmental questions. I can't really translate that. Sachverständigenrat Umweltfragen. But she's a very smart woman, I think worth listening to, because she said in transitional studies, the incumbents, the ones that are heard, they will cry the loudest. And the other ones will not have the means yet to counterbalance that. So I think if I would have to be asked, what should the Commission do? Then I think it's high time now to use the unique opportunity of having 33 industry associations last Friday call for making the recovery a green European recovery. Then 180 signatures with Mr. Canfin yesterday asking for exactly the same, and then 12 ministers asking for exactly the same. So I think we have a unique opportunity to say, guys, we have trillions of euros at the table that were not available in the time before this corona crisis to do anything. Now they are available to safeguard Europe, but they should be used in order to safeguard Europe and push it into the right direction on the green pathway. And here I think the European Commission needs to take a position. This cannot be handled technology neutral. It has to be with a precedent, with a prerequisite to say, wherever you want to put this money, it has to help us develop into this direction of 100% renewable system. I think we can do that. I would like to say from our perspective, from the heating sector, this is a very slow sector. So if we allow this sector to develop by itself, it will probably not move fast enough. So we need some sort of guidance that is better than simply saying we use it as technology neutral. We need a statement like the city of Vienna that said, okay, we are working now to ban fossil fuel heating from our existing buildings, like the city of Hamburg that said it yesterday, also that said we will ban oil boilers from residential heating, because you have to show people that alternatives exist and they must use them, especially when we take into consideration that the costs are lower than just maintaining the status quo. And what I think is also really important, people need to learn that they can't complain in 20 years that nobody told them that they couldn't invest into a fossil fuel heating system. This is so obvious today that it's no longer possible, that it needs to be set. And then the political framework, the market framework conditions need to be shaped in a way that your personal decision aligns with the overarching goal of a green, 100% renewable, sustainable and resilient Europe.
Yes, maybe I would like to add something to what Thomas said. I mean, I think first, I fully agree on the fact that we need to make choices, and regarding the costs, really, I think it's really a no-brainer. And Paula, I understand the worries as well about the decommissioning, but I think we need to acknowledge that decommissioning will happen anyway in any scenario. No energy is eternal, and at some point, instead of the cost of decommissioning, which are also very important and will happen in any case, we need to consider the environmental benefits. Social acceptance, extremely important as well in a recovery where the citizen has to be at the core, and maybe we did not yet speak enough of the citizen, and I think in the upcoming policies we will need to take that into account, especially, and that is also maybe another elephant in the room we did not yet address, which is large projects. I mean, large-scale renewable projects will be needed at some point. It is absolutely critical to bring the volumes needed. And for that, we also need to find ways to engage with its citizens. And I think that is one interesting recommendation we have in the report to kind of scale up the concept of citizen energy, notably, because we need to find ways to engage local communities in the deployment as well of large-scale projects on top of rooftops. And we see a lot of appetite for that from, I mean, renewable communities. We already saw that many cities want to start engaging with energy companies to become owners of their own large-scale installations outside their own city and become their own provider. And we need to address that, as well as to find new ways to engage society. Maybe the Climate Pact could be really something useful for it. And just coming back to the funding question, which indeed is absolutely pivotal. One thing we observed in the past is that despite of the amount of money, and I think we can all really applaud the fact that there is always more money kind of being safeguarded for the transition, we also need to find ways to spend it. Because today what we see is also that there is a big issue to absorb the funds that we have. And maybe that is another question for the Climate Pact, because as we said, there is a huge potential, there is more appetite. Core regions, citizens, cities are really emerging as new players, and we need to find ways to engage them better.
And Aurélie, this is where I actually liked your recommendation of the implementation body, as well as the idea of engaging better with citizens and bringing them into the picture very much. And Thomas made the point at the very beginning, and Thomas, in your first intervention, how do we, you called it activate the end user. I probably would phrase it much more openly. How do we kind of, and how do we come to a situation that the citizens can join what many see, and this we saw at the last European elections, as a really critical role also for Europe. And so how do we open much more than we have at the moment communication channels between the European, national and the city levels, regional levels, and to create positive feedback loops of things that are moving here can be understood also and picked up in other parts of Europe, that you have much more flexible funding instruments in place, that you have a lot of support to actually develop some of the projects, to have what you say bankable projects, investment ready, shovel ready projects. We really have a dire need of, in some regions of Europe, to have much more practical support of that. And against this background, I was saying that what was previously called the Structural Reform Support Service, so what is today DG Reform, there I really believe that the Commission needs to massively ramp up the resources and really prioritize as one of the priorities the clean energy transition, and very practically offer help, support to regions, cities, member states that do not have some of the necessary skills. You also mentioned it, Aurélie, the skilling in the recommendation, the skilling needs to ramp up solar PV deployment in Europe. And of course, the same goes for the building renovation challenge, etc. So there's a lot where I would probably concur a bit with Paula. You can only do so much from the corridors of the Commission in pushing down. There needs to be, I think, much more interaction that we have to set up, and communication channels between the local, regional, national, and the European levels, and to have positive feedback loops all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're coming to an end. I think it's we have our one and a half hours. What I think we have tons of questions here that we've received. So maybe to everyone. So this is just the launch of the report. So we will have many interviews coming, many articles, many panels where we will address all these points that were raised, because of course we haven't discussed how you can actually in detail make sure that all these amounts, we're talking about an average 250 gigawatts of solar that needs to be installed per year, how that can actually happen. We thought a lot about that, and there are answers for all these questions, and we will at some point answer them in various channels. So first of all, I would like to say thank you again to the panel that you joined with us the launch of our 100% renewable energy in Europe before 2050 report. And I would also like to take this opportunity because some of the points, one is, for example, an industrial strategy that we need in order to be somewhat energy independent, have some energy security in the long run when we think about such huge dependence on solar and wind. So, for example, we will have tomorrow, next slide, please. The next webinar already, where we will discuss in the parliament, also with parliamentarians in the parliament. It's not really that was planned, but it's not possible to discuss a strategic approach to the European renewable industry. And in this case, we want to really discuss how a solar industrial policy could look like. Agora recently also had in their recommendations to COVID-19 mentioned that we should have such a strategy and make sure that we also have a large competitive solar industry in Europe. And this will be discussed tomorrow, and then we have a few more webinars. And in all of these webinars, we will also address some of the questions that are raised in this report. This looks into 2050 and obviously will accompany us for another while. But as everyone on this panel said, yes, this decade is the crucial one. So I think, and now we have also a threat and an opportunity with the recovery packages coming from COVID-19 for renewables, which we have to make sure that we tap that also. Thanks to everyone, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.